I knew the chair was missing before anyone said a word. The second we stepped onto that rooftop terrace, I scanned the table. 14 guests, 13 chairs. My name wasn't there. No plate, no glass, no space. I'm Derek Lawson, 58. I live in Boston and run a small ops firm that cleans up corporate disasters. Flights rerouted, hotels rebooked, broken vendors replaced on deadline. I make things work. Lila, my wife, calls it logistics. I call it knowing where the cracks are before anyone falls through. She handed me her mother's 72nd birthday trip to Rome, like it was another file to close. "You're so good at this," she said. Her voice sweetened every time she wanted something big. I'd handled everything. 14 flights from 3 different states, suites at one of the best hotels in Rome, drivers who spoke English and showed up early, dinner itineraries down to the bread course. Margaret Whitcomb, my mother-in-law, wanted elegance, not flash. A curated Roman week for the family name. The Whitcombs are old money, real old. They don't brag, they imply, they don't argue, they correct. I'd learned to stay quiet and get the work done. It was easier that way. The elevator up to the terrace had a glass wall that looked over the forum. Lila and I were in the back, surrounded by cousins and uncles and polished smiles. I'd already been up there an hour before to confirm the setup. The quartet was tuning, candles were lit, flowers crisp. Then we stepped out. Quick note, before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? The place looked like something out of a wedding catalog. White floral runners, tiny votives. You could smell lemon blossoms from the corner planters. Everyone drifted toward the table, murmuring. I walked behind Lila, and then I stopped. My place was gone. Margaret saw it instantly. She turned her head just slightly, gave that smile she uses when she's about to correct someone. "Is something wrong?" she asked, like I'd found a fingerprint on the silver. Evan, Lila's brother, was already grinning. Paige, her sister, tilted her head like she was waiting for someone to cue her line. Then Lila laughed, light, like it was nothing. "Oops, guess we miscounted." A few others chuckled. I stood there like a damn extra. Even the server acted like I wasn't there. My face flushed hot. I didn't blink, didn't shake. I just said, calm as hell, "Seems I'm not family." The line landed. That's when the chuckles died. Lila's smile twitched. A couple cousins looked away like kids caught cheating. I turned and walked, past the hostess stand, down the elevator, into the Roman night. No raised voice, no begging. Just a flat, weird calm. Across the street, I found a quiet cafe. I ordered a short espresso, pulled out my phone, and started going through the files. They had about 30 minutes before the gears I'd built started seizing up. Not petty, just physics. You pull one screw, the whole table shifts. The espresso hit like a fuse. I scrolled through my inbox with one hand, steady and calm, but inside my brain was pacing. Not angry, focused. The thing with systems is, once you know where the control panel is, you can flip switches without breaking a sweat. 5 years earlier, I met Lila at a Boston fundraiser where the AV team no-showed, and the timeline was unraveling in real time. I reworked the whole thing in 20 minutes flat. New flow, lights, alternate mic setup from a DJ rig we dragged out of a supply closet. It landed. Donors opened checkbooks. Lila noticed. She walked over during cleanup, heels in one hand, champagne in the other, and said, "Are you the guy who saved this circus?" I told her, "I just made the pieces fit." She smiled like I'd said something clever. That polished, subtle charm. The kind that made you feel like she saw more in you than what you were holding. She asked about my work like it was something real. Not just running errands for the rich, but actual problem solving. I liked that. A week later, her family hired me to run a gala, then another. They passed my name around like a Swiss Army knife. Inside those events, I saw how they moved. Everything surfaced smooth, but underneath it was constant repositioning. Money didn't flow, it postured. Margaret Whitcomb looked me up and down at that first event and made her call. I wasn't a son-in-law. I was support staff, and support staff could be useful. There were signals. Her cousin called me salt of the earth, like it was a diagnosis. Margaret once told a florist I did high-end handyman coordination. Lila laughed it off, then handed me another spreadsheet. I told myself it didn't matter. I didn't need their approval. I just needed to make things work. That's my zone. I marry the plan, make it breathe. So, when Lila started folding me into the family by task, airport pickups, custom seating charts, calling in favors from vendors, I told myself that was love too. Not flowers and poems, but trust, dependability. The calendar got tight, her priorities became mine. I stopped pushing back. It was easier to say yes. Margaret would point at the menu and say, "Too casual." I'd nod. Paige would want a head table redone the morning of an event. I'd fix it. The goal was smooth execution and no waves. Looking back, I don't think they ever saw me. Just the job I did for free. This Rome trip was supposed to be the prize at the end of all that obedience. Margaret's crown jewel, as Lila called it. 4 nights at one of the best hotels in Italy, followed by a weekend at a restored villa out in wine country. I built it tight. Private drivers, custom pacing for the older relatives. A chef who respected allergies and preferences without attitude. All the bookings ran through my company account, cleaner that way. Better leverage on deposits, faster refunds if something went sideways. Lila said it made the whole thing more professional. I didn't argue. I like things that work. But here's what I missed. While I was smoothing edges and patching holes, they were turning me into a prop. The guy behind the curtain, the one they leaned on until the lights came up. Rome made that visible. When they left out the chair, they didn't forget me. They revealed me. And once you see that, you don't unsee it. I sat there at that cafe, phone in hand, and the first place my mind went wasn't Rome. It went back to the first time the numbers stopped lining up. About 6 weeks before we flew, the money got weird. Not rich people are annoying weird, operationally weird. A transfer from one of Margaret's foundations hit a delay. Then Charles's office sent me a double confirmation request on a deposit I'd already confirmed twice. Vendors started checking in with that careful tone professionals use when they smell a problem but don't want to accuse you. Just checking on timing, Mr. Lawson. I showed Lila a couple of the emails at our kitchen island. She barely looked up from her coffee. European banks are slow, she said, like she was reading a weather report. I knew wires. I knew escrow. Slow was normal. Inconsistent wasn't. So I tightened my own grip. I made a private folder and started dropping everything into it. Contracts, invoices, bank confirmations, every email chain. Nothing dramatic, just clean, like tightening bolts before a long drive. 2 mornings before we left, Lila's iPad was on the kitchen counter, screen still lit. I wasn't snooping. I walked over to check our flight time because she'd been handling the seating, and I didn't trust her version of handled. A message preview popped up. Cannot wait to see you in Rome. Did you tell him yet? From a contact saved as B. That single letter hit me harder than it should have. My thumb hovered, and I could have backed off. I didn't. I opened it. Brandon Pierce, her old boyfriend, the one Margaret used to bring up like he was some lost heirloom. Brandon would have understood, Margaret once said, after I picked a band she thought was too loud. Like my job was to audition for the family, the thread went back months, little meetups. Long weekends. Times Lila told me she was visiting Paige or doing a charity planning session. It was all there, laid out like an itinerary I didn't book. Then I saw the line that made my vision go sharp at the edges. A baby due in 5 months. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest and kept standing anyway. My hands stayed steady, which almost scared me more. I took screenshots, every piece that mattered, and emailed them to myself from a clean account. I deleted the scent trail from the iPad. Not because I wanted to hide it forever, because I wanted control over what happened next. Lila walked in humming, hair still damp from the shower, like she didn't have a live grenade in her pocket. She leaned over my shoulder and said, "Did you book the Sunset driver for day 2? I swallowed hard enough to feel it. "Yeah," I said. "All set." She kissed my cheek, quick and casual, like we were fine. I didn't flinch. I just kept breathing and watched her walk away. On the flight, she slept like a rock, head tilted to the window, mouth slightly open, peaceful. I stared at the seatback map and told myself one thing: get through the week, then deal with it. I wasn't proud of that, but I wanted proof, leverage, and clean timing. Rome greeted us with that warm yellow light near dusk, the kind that makes everything look softer than it is. I had 3 vans lined up, cold water in the doors, rooms pre-keyed, check-in smooth. Margaret stepped out, looked at the cars, and said, "I thought the hotel had a better fleet." I bit my tongue and kept moving. By the second day, the family started doing Whitcomb-only stops, coffee and Trastevere without me, jewelry browsing by tradition. Lila left notes like I was staff. Meeting Dad, be back later. Some nights she came back smelling like a man's cologne that wasn't mine. And every time something didn't add up, I took out my phone, grabbed another screenshot, and saved it. I locked my phone and slid it into my pocket, then followed them through another family stop, like I didn't feel my own life splitting in half. That night, back in the suite, Lila talked about tomorrow's schedule like it was a business trip. Paige wants to hit a market early, she said, brushing her hair. Then we meet my parents for lunch. I nodded and made a small noise that could have meant anything. My stomach felt hollow, like it was waiting for bad news it already had. The next morning, our third one there, Lila moved fast. She was in that tight, efficient mode she got from her mother. She threw on a linen dress, checked her reflection, and said, "I'm running down to meet Paige." "Okay," I said. She grabbed her purse, then hesitated, like she wanted to say something else. She didn't. She walked out, and the door clicked shut behind her. A few seconds later, I saw the leather folio she always carried. It was on the bed, like she dropped it mid-thought. Normally, I wouldn't touch it. I'm not that guy. But I was already drowning, and at some point you stop caring about being polite to the people holding your head under. I opened it. Right on top were papers with a letterhead I recognized, Whitcomb Counsel, a firm name that showed up on donor boards and quiet real estate deals. The first page said separation terms, and the date at the top was 10 weeks earlier. 10 weeks. I flipped through, slow and careful, like speed would make it more real. It was written in that clean, smug legal tone that pretends it's doing you a favor while it robs you calmly. Amicable split. One-time payout. The number was a joke, barely enough to cover a year of rent back home, and I knew that's what they wanted. Keep me moving, keep me quiet, keep me gone. Then I saw the line about no claim on future inheritance. I actually snorted when I read it. Not because it was funny, but because it was so on brand. They couldn't stand the idea that I'd ever be connected to their money again, even in a divorce. Under that was something even worse, a speaking outline, bullet pointed like a press release, like they were launching a new product. Lila and Derek will part ways. We remain friends. We've grown apart. He'll always have a seat at our table. I stared at that last line until my eyes burned. A seat, sure. In the same pocket, folded neat, was a printed email from Charles to Lila. It talked about moving personal funds to a quieter channel before any public notice. It wasn't even coded well, just a rich guy reminding his daughter to hide the money before the story broke. And tucked behind that was a handwritten note on thick stationery, Margaret's handwriting, sharp and tight, like she pressed the pen hard. "Once this unpleasantness is behind us, you can bring Brandon properly." My throat went dry. Brandon, properly, like I was the stain they were scrubbing out before the next dinner party. I didn't scream, I didn't punch a wall, my hands stayed steady, which felt almost unreal. I pulled out my phone, snapped photos of every page, every note, every date. Then I put the papers back in the exact order I found them, slid the folio closed, and set it right where it had been on the bed. Lila walked in 20 minutes later, carrying a pastry bag, acting normal. "You want a coffee?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'm good." She didn't push. She just started talking about Paige's mood like it mattered. That afternoon, in the hotel lobby, I waited near the concierge desk while Lila checked something with her mom. There was a decorative divider between us, thin enough to hear everything. Margaret's voice came through smooth and certain. "We will have 13 chairs, not 14, she said. "My son-in-law won't be staying. A family matter." My jaw tightened so hard my teeth ached. I walked into the elevator, alone, and when the door slid shut, the mirrored walls made it feel like a cage. Back in the hallway, I didn't go to the suite. I turned, marched straight to the business center, sat at the first computer, and started building a new plan. I pulled the door to the business center shut behind me and sat down hard in the leather chair. Screen flickered to life. I logged into the folder I'd prepped 2 days earlier before I'd ever seen the folio or heard Margaret lock in the head count. I'd called it Go Kit, like I was prepping for a storm. That's exactly what it was. First up, John Carlo, the restaurant manager. I sent him a clean, time-stamped notice, PDF copies of the signed booking agreement, line-itemed with my company's name as financial guarantor. No Whitcomb card, no Whitcomb house account, no standing trust authorization. Subject line, event payment update. Immediate attention required. I told him I was withdrawing all company liability effective immediately, and all remaining charges were to be handled by the party at the table. No pre-approved fallback, no invoice forwarding. Then I pulled up the rest. The vineyard lunch for tomorrow, canceled. Private Vatican guide, canceled. Luxury charter on the Amalfi Coast, canceled. The weekend villa in Montepulciano, gone. Each one had been guaranteed under my company's name. I rescinded every authorization and redirected the deposits back to my business account. I attached scanned letters for the vendors, signed and time-stamped, clear, legal, bulletproof. This wasn't a tantrum, it was a realignment. They'd decided I wasn't family. Fine. Then they didn't get the perks of calling me family when the bill came due. Across the street, the restaurant's awning glowed gold under the Roman dusk. I found a corner cafe with a clean sightline to the entrance and sat at a table where no one inside could clock me. I ordered a short espresso, no sugar, and pulled out my phone. Timer running. 9 minutes in. Lila. Where are you? You're being dramatic. 12 minutes. Lila. Mom is upset. 16. Lila. The hotel says the villa confirmation got pulled. Did you mess something up? I didn't respond. Every second of silence spoke louder than a phone call ever could. At 25 minutes, I had confirmation emails from every vendor. File numbers, contact names, reversal IDs. My inbox looked like a kill list. Nothing emotional. Just order after order rolling back into my hands. I finished the espresso, paid in cash, and tucked my phone in my inside jacket pocket. The sidewalk was warm from the day's heat as I walked back toward the restaurant. I went around the side, toward the service entrance, and knocked twice. Giancarlo answered himself. His face was calm, but his eyes were bright. He nodded like I was right on time. I told the staff to hold first course until 8:10, he said. You still want the action at that time? Yeah, I said. Let it hit the table first. He smiled, not mean, just knowing, and straightened his jacket. This will be a story. I followed him through the back and stood just behind a curved divider near the kitchen. From there, I had a full view of the rooftop terrace without being seen. 14 people, 13 seats. The quartet was playing something light and useless. The candles flickered. The wine was already poured. I checked the clock. 8:08 p.m., 2 minutes. From that little alcove behind the divider, I had the perfect view. Nobody saw me, but I saw everything. The terrace glowed like a magazine spread. Strings of light above, gold-rimmed plates below. The quartet eased into some soft instrumental thing I didn't recognize. Classy, harmless. The servers placed the first course with a practiced rhythm. Margaret had insisted on Kaluga caviar, flown in and refrigerated perfectly. Not a single spoon out of place. Glasses clinked. That's when the fake laughter started. You know the sound, forced, a little too bright. That polished public laugh people use when they're performing family. Then Giancarlo stepped in. He went to Charles first. Quiet, respectful. I couldn't hear his words, but I didn't have to. I knew the script. He was telling him the authorization had been pulled by the contracting party. Me. The event would need to be paid for directly now, card or wire, no exceptions. At first, Charles smiled like it was just a mix-up. Like this kind of thing could be fixed with charm. Then he checked one app, frowned, checked another. I saw the shift happen in his body before it hit his face. Margaret's fork froze in midair. She hadn't even touched the caviar. Paige leaned toward Lila and whispered. Evan stared at the server like he expected someone to apologize and disappear. That's when my phone rang. Lila. I let it ring. It rang again. I picked up. Fix this, she hissed. You're embarrassing us. I kept my voice flat. You made sure I didn't have a chair. Fix it yourselves. She jumped in with that urgent, wounded tone she saved for when things slipped out of her grip. My parents are under pressure. You're overreacting. I didn't flinch. I saw the separation papers, the Brandon thread, the note from your mother. Dead silence. Then she said it. You shouldn't have looked. I felt that one. Deep. But I didn't let it show. Neither should you have booked Rome behind my back with him in the margins, I said. She paused, long enough to regroup. We can talk after dinner. There's not gonna be a talk, I said, and hung up. Back on the terrace, Giancarlo hadn't moved from his spot. He didn't raise his voice, didn't flinch. He calmly explained again. This meal could continue, of course, but payment was required up front. Standard policy in the absence of a signed guarantee. The Whitcombs hadn't had a bill problem in 40 years. But tonight, with their cards flagging for unusual activity and their primary wire routes needing 2 business days, they did. Charles stood up and stepped away, muttering fast into his phone. Margaret's mouth was tight. Her eyes didn't blink. Evan was still scrolling his phone like the solution was hiding between apps. Paige looked like she might cry. The cousins were dead silent now. And Lila, she just stared at her lap. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel sorry. I just watched them work to hold the image together. These people who set me up to vanish quietly. And now couldn't even pay for their own show. It's something else, seeing people so used to pulling the strings fumble when someone cuts the thread. I stepped out from behind the divider and into the soft glow of their perfect little nightmare. The music had stopped. The servers froze mid-step. 14 faces turned, some angry, some shocked. A few looked down, suddenly real interested in their bread plates. I walked straight up to the table, no rush, no drama, just calm steps and a steady spine. Margaret was the first to speak, of course. "How dare you do this?" she said, not loud, not panicked, just sharp, like she was swatting a fly that had the nerve to land on her glass. I looked her dead in the eye. "You arranged a show," I said. "I declined to act in it." Charles sat forward, face red. "There are contracts involved. You can't just—" I cut him off, still calm. Every contract was under my company. I was the name coordinator and financial guarantor. Every deposit came from my accounts. I returned what was mine and removed my name from the events. "You want dinner? Pay for it." He blinked like no one had ever said that to him in public before. Lila jumped in. "We were going to talk after this week." I turned to her, no expression. "You were going to read a script," I said. "Then bring Brandon in the front door once I was gone." She didn't flinch. That part hurt more than I thought it would. Evan muttered, "You're being ungrateful." Paige leaned forward like she had a warning to deliver. "You'll regret making enemies." I scanned the table, slow. Let it land. "I've got copies of everything," I said. "The offshore transfers, the draft terms, the emails. If any of you come for me, legally, financially, publicly, I go straight to regulators. Then the press." They didn't speak, but their faces said it all. Fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just blinks and stops chewing. That's the thing about people like the Whitcombs. They can handle lawyers. They've been around lawsuits before. What they hate is daylight, exposure. Their reputation is the currency. I was ready to spend it. Giancarlo hovered a few feet away, hands folded, polite but present. I nodded to him, then looked back at the table. "Seems I'm not family," I said again. This time, no heat behind it, just fact. So, I'm not picking up the family tab. No one stopped me. I turned and walked, slow and easy, past the servers, past the stunned string quartet, past whatever fake story they'd planned to spin later. I didn't look back. That dinner, I heard later, through a vendor who owed me a favor, that Margaret handed over a vintage bracelet as collateral so they could finish the night without a full scene. Not my problem anymore. I took the long way back to the hotel, walked through alleys that smelled like basil and old stone. I wasn't rushing. I booked an early flight the second I hit the lobby, and when I got upstairs, I slept like I hadn't in months. When I landed at Logan, I didn't go home. I didn't even tell myself I might. I grabbed my carry-on, walked straight out, and slid into a rideshare like I'd done it 1,000 times. A client of mine had a short-term place in South Boston. Clean, simple, no questions. I went straight there, dropped my bag, then called a moving company and booked them for the next morning. No speeches, no thinking, just action. The next day I showed up at the house with 2 movers and a tight list. I took what was mine, tools, work files, my desktop setup, a few guitars I'd owned since before Lila's world swallowed mine, and the framed photos from before the Whitcombs, my dad at a Red Sox game, my sister in her graduation cap, me with my old crew at a job site, the stuff that proved I existed before I became Derek, the logistics guy. I left the rest, furniture, wedding gifts, decorative junk Margaret picked out to elevate our place. Let it rot in that house with their name stamped all over it. That afternoon, I met my lawyer, Marla Jimenez, in her downtown office. Marla was all business, smart eyes, no patience for rich family nonsense. I handed her a packet with everything: the drafted separation terms, the emails, the screenshots, the money notes, the Brandon thread. She flipped through it once, calm as a surgeon. "You want me to file?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "I want it locked." Marla nodded and slid it into a thick folder. "If they poke, we poke back." "I'm fine with that," I said, and stood up. A week after Rome, Lila showed up at my door. No makeup, hair tied up. Wearing one of my old gray sweatshirts like it meant something. Like it gave her the right to step into my space again. She knocked once and then opened the door like she still lived there. "You've made this worse than it had to be," she said, voice tight. I didn't move aside for her. She came in anyway. She talked fast, like she had a timer running. "There are questions now. SEC stuff. Dad's getting calls. Donors are pulling back from Mom's foundation. 2 board members resigned. The hotel in Rome is demanding wires up front for anything connected to us." I let her talk. I watched her hands. They shook just a little. Then she got to the point. "Give back the documents, sign an NDA, and I'll make sure you're taken care of." I stared at her. "I don't want a dime." Her eyes narrowed like she couldn't compute that answer. "I want my name clear," I said. "I want my business untouched. I want the divorce clean, no claims on each other's future money, and I want out without one more Whitcomb dinner, ever." She blinked slowly. "You're walking away from leverage." I shrugged. "I'm walking toward a life where my chair is there when I arrive." She didn't flinch, not even at that. Then she tried one last angle. "Brandon is serious about stepping up. He wants to do this right." I gave her a flat look. "I hope he's ready for the full Whitcomb experience." That one finally hit. She blinked like she'd tasted something bitter. She turned and left without slamming the door, like she wanted credit for restraint. I locked it behind her and didn't touch the handle again. 2 weeks later, a small item ran in the Boston business pages. Words like irregularities and investor concerns. My phone lit up with old clients telling me they respected how I handled everything. I saved Marla's number as a favorite and called her to start the divorce paperwork. A year to the week after I walked out of that rooftop in Rome, I stood on a terrace in Amalfi with a fresh espresso and a view that looked like a screensaver. The sea below sparkled like someone had over-edited the sky. My team moved like clockwork behind me, 24 execs being herded from breakout sessions to lunch without a single delay. This client paid on time, asked smart questions, and thanked the crew by name. That was the difference. No posturing, no games, just straight business with grown-ups. The divorce had gone through quiet. No court hearings, no drawn-out drama. Marla handled it like she handled everything. Clean, direct, no wasted motion. The Whitcombs didn't have the bandwidth to fight me. They were too busy putting out fires of their own. Half their nameplate donors vanished before year-end. 3 weeks before their son arrived, Lila married Brandon in a quiet little ceremony on Martha's Vineyard. Someone sent me the photo. I deleted it. No anger, just not mine to carry. I didn't send a card or a text. Work filled in the spaces. The clients who only liked me for my Whitcomb connection faded out, and I let them go. The ones who respected clean execution started calling more. I hired 2 veterans I'd worked gigs with for years and put them on payroll. We stopped saying yes to favor jobs that looked good on paper but paid in headaches. I think about Rome sometimes, not the skyline or the food. The moment I saw that empty space where my chair should have been, I felt small for maybe 3 seconds. Then I felt awake. That missing chair told me more truth than every holiday toast, every fake laugh at their table. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just moved the pieces back where they belonged and stepped away. If people want to call that revenge, fine. I call it letting them sit in the mess they built and expecting someone else to clean. The Whitcombs still throw parties, last I heard, but fewer people show now. Reputation has a long memory, even in old money circles. There's one habit I kept from all that. I count chairs when I walk into a room, not just literally. I look for the spot meant for me. If it's not there, I don't force it. I don't ask twice. I make a different plan. On my last night in Amalfi, I leaned on the balcony rail with that espresso and watched the last boat drift in. Sky fading, air still warm. My phone buzzed. Thank you note from the client's CFO. Short, professional, respectful. That's all I want now. I don't need the Whitcomb's table. I built my own. And every time I sit down, the chair is already waiting.